While the Hurricanes did not draft in round one, they still made 6 picks on day 2. So let's talk about the 2026 NHL Draft for the Carolina Hurricanes on a Monday edition of the Lockdown Hurricanes.
Your Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Monday edition of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm your host, Zach Martin, and on today's show, we're going to be focusing a lot on the draft for the Carolina Hurricanes as they've turned 4 picks into 6, as they've brought in 2 Swedes, 2 Americans, and 2 Canadians in the organization. So we'll talk about all those guys and then give you my overall thoughts from the draft as well. So the Hurricanes coming into the actual day, we all know they had the 31st overall pick, had a pick in the 4th and a couple in the 6th. Well, surprise, surprise as always to nobody that the Hurricanes actually drafted out of the first round and got 2 second-rounders, which included the 61st overall, but they also had a pick earlier, and then they traded that one away for the 51st overall to get more draft picks, but they finally made the pick. Well, they got William Håkansson from Luleå out of the Swedish Hockey League. Now, last season for when you talk about Håkansson, he actually played for the Luleå HFU 20 team, got 4 points in 6 games, all of them assists. Then he also played for Luleå themselves in the SHL, had 2 assists in 22 games, was a +1 in the playoffs, no points in 9 games, and then was also on loan for a little bit for the Amuta IS team, where he got 2 goals and 4 points in 16 games. And of course, then he played a lot of, international stuff, World Juniors, got 2 assists in 7 games. And then overall, his entire Swedish international season, he had 1 goal and 3 assists in 11 games overall. But going into next season, he will be with Luleå HF for the SHL. And this is what the Hurricanes, more specifically Darren York, talked about when talking about Håkansson. William Håkansson is a player that we've known very well, playing in the international events and in Sweden. Big, rangy defenseman that skates well, and it has nastiness. We want our defenseman to be able to hold tight gaps and play fast defensively, and he fits that style of play perfectly. And the funny thing is, too, Håkansson, when asked about his, who his player comparison that he sees himself as, he says he's more like a Jacob Slavin, which, hey, you can never go wrong with the guy who wants to be like a Jacob Slavin 2.0, where he's a really good shutdown defenseman, can play, fast defensively, can, shut guys down and not give them opportunities. The thing is, though, you're talking about a guy in Håkansson who's 18 years old. He's a left shot defenseman. He's already 6'5", 217. That is a big body who can move fast. And the fact that he's only 18, if he grows another inch, great. Then you're talking about a 6'6" defender, and he's at 217. Get him to North America at some point and put some weight on him with some, strength and conditioning North American style. You can look at a guy who's going to be like 6'5", 220, and he can still skate. That is a big boy on the blue line. So overall, not a bad move for the Hurricanes to go and get William Håkansson. Like I said, the fact that they already view him as a really good player, that's going to be something huge, because when they've also mentioned about him as well, for Håkansson, he's a leader. He plays exactly the way the Hurricanes value their players to play. They really like his character of this kid, and the fact that, when you talk about what Mike Kelly said, they view him as a top 25 player. He's a Matthias Oland type of player. And that's even what Jason Bukala said as well. The fact that he's just really good defensively and he has really good skating abilities. And the fact that this kid's 18 and he's going to be with Luleå through at least 27, 28. So it's going to be a couple seasons before we see him in North America. So you're looking at the 28, 29 season. It's a little way off. But for the fact that the Hurricanes view a guy who's 18, who's already 6'5", 217, that's not bad for your first pick at 51. So it should be really exciting to see how he goes in terms of how all of that plays out. Now, we talked about earlier how they traded for the 61st overall pick. Well, they go get their second Swede of the draft. And this one is Wiggo Sörensson, or Wiggo Sörensson, depending on how you want to pronounce it. But it's, 5'11", 181 out of the Boro Vetlanda HC team out of Sweden. He is a forward. He's listed as a forward, but they say he's more like a left wing type of deal. He also can play center. He's a left shot. He's a very offensive center. He's a playmaker and a speedster. But like I said, they view him as a winger as well. Now, last year played on multiple different teams over a lot of different divisions. You're talking about the Boro Vetlanda HCU 20 team in Division 1, 32 goals, 56 points in 13 games. And that's what the U20 team in Division 1 absolutely went lights out. The Boro Vetlanda HC Division 2 team, how about 20 goals, 38 points in 29 games? And then for their qualification, 4 goals, 10 points in 8 games. And they even played for the Vaxio Lakers U18 and U20 teams. And of course, that was 2 games, 4 points. But overall, that's some pretty good scoring effect. The fact that he played in a Division 2 for Boro Vetlanda, had 38 points in 29 games, and then for their U20 team, 56 points in 13 games. He had 32 goals alone. That's absolutely unreal. And when you look at what he did for the World Junior Sweden team, how about 4 goals, 6 points in 6 games? Not bad overall. Now, next season, at least, he's going to be with Boro Vetlanda for the Hockey Etan League. Now, when asked about him, Darren York said, Wiggo Sörensson is probably a name that not too many people are familiar with because of the fact that he's the first guy ever to get drafted out of the Swedish 4th tier league, but he did make their appearance. So York continues with, given the league that he plays, but we kind of look at this as a very similar to guys coming out of the Minnesota high school hockey that get the opportunity to play for the U.S. national development team. He got to play for the national teams in every single tournament. He started earning a little bit more ice time and a little bit more ice time. And when you're able to go from a lesser league up to the top leagues and just be able to adapt, that's saying something. It goes to his hockey sense, his ability to play hard, his ability to play fast, and be a centerman that was snapping pucks back on the faceoffs against the best in the April tournament. This is a player that has an all-around game that suits what we're looking for when we're trying to draft forwards. And the thing is, the comparison they were talking about for Sörensson, how about Buffalo Sabres' Zach Benson? That really says a lot for the fact that a lot of people view him as like a Zach Benson type. And Tony Granato, who is a longtime staple when it comes to hockey, when you talk about Sörensson, he sticks his nose in there. He wants to be part of it. He's going to be engaged in the game. As an opponent, you know he's going to show that he's somewhere out there and be that agitator. I've got a lot of time for him. That really says a lot for the fact you're talking about a guy who's coming out of the Swedish 4th league, which is considered like Minnesota high school hockey. And he's already compared to Zach Benson, who's already a good player. That says a lot in the fact that the Hurricanes were able to get him at 61. That could be a good sneaky pick that maybe works out down the road. And the fact that he's already, like I said, he's 5'11", 181. Give him to like 6 foot, 6'1", maybe even 6'2", and give him like 190, 200 pounds. That guy could be a really legit center who could be really play fast, can find his teammates when he needs to be, and just be an agitator. This guy could be really fun to watch for sure. So another guy to look out for, like I said, for the fact that he's going to be playing in the Hockey Etan League in the Boro Vetlanda HC program. So that's going to be really fun to see what he can do. Now, the last guy we're going to talk about for the first part of this show is that we're going to be talking about Zachary Lansard from the Regina Pats. And this is another guy that I think has, someone who could be really fun to watch for what he can do, because they got him at 68th overall in round 3, one of the other picks they picked up. 6 foot, 217 out of Regina for the WHL, of course, the team that, where Connor Bedard came from. And the fact that he was the rookie of the year last year, back in the 24-25 season, like I said, rookie of the year, he's right-handed, right winger. And the fact that last season when he was 17 years old, but the fact that he had 56 points in 68 games, that is a big jump for a guy like that. Being a rookie of the year with decent-ish points to getting 56 in 68 games, this is another guy to potentially watch. So Jason Bakula said he's not the biggest guy, but he's tenacious, competitive, and fast. He creates turnovers, and then when he gets the puck around the net, he knows what to do with it. That's a Carolina Hurricane in a nutshell. Basically, you're looking at a guy who could be another junkyard dog type, like I said, but 6', 217, that's a pretty decent size. Yeah, I mean, he's not the tallest guy in the world, but 6 foot at 217 already at 17, 18 years old. That's pretty dang good, all things considered. And Darren York said he's gritty, competitive, high skill level, and he's a kid who can keep getting better and better every single year and throughout the year and this year. He has the ability to hold on to the puck and defend guys and get them on his back hip while also being able to see the open man. That says a lot when you're talking about a guy who can find a way to have the hockey IQ to do what he needs to do and still be able to make plays and get them done. So that's definitely someone to keep an eye on when you look at, a potential winger that you can get somewhere down the road. And I think the fact that you're looking at a guy who's going to play with, what he's going to do overall, I think he's going to be really fun to watch as well. So far through the first three picks, you're talking about Håkansson, you're talking about Sörensson, you're talking about Lansard, who you're talking two Swedes, you got a Canadian, you got winger, center, defenseman. Not a bad start for the Carolina Hurricanes for the fact they go from having 4 picks, none in the second, none in the third. You get 2 Swedes in the second round. You pick up a Canadian winger in the third who could be definitely fun to watch. Now later on, they go pick up 2 American and another Canadian. So stick around. We'll talk about the last 3 picks that the Hurricanes made in the draft here in a second on a Monday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. As companies grow, customer support gets a lot more complicated. More customers means more questions, more channels to manage, and higher expectations for fast, personalized service. That's usually when businesses start looking at AI, but most solutions either feel too generic or take forever to implement. That's where Decagon comes in. Decagon helps companies create personalized, concierge-style customer experiences with AI agents across chat, email, voice, and SMS. Their agents are available 24/7, feel natural to talk to, and can resolve customer requests on their own, helping businesses scale support without losing that personal touch. The best customer experiences don't happen by accident. Whether it's in business or sports, people remember organizations that respond quickly, understand context, and make every interaction feel personal. We've all had situations where something went wrong, but you remember is how the company handled it. The organizations that respond quickly and solve problems efficiently, that's where Decagon is helping businesses create more of those moments by giving customers fast, personalized support whenever they need it. So, ready to transform your customer support? Go to decagon.ai/LockedOnNHL to get a personalized demo and see what Decagon can do for your team. That's decagon.ai/LockedOnNHL. Get your daily Carolina Hurricanes fix completely ad-free, but join the Everydayer Club today. Start your 7-day free trial right now and get closer to your team without the interruptions. Click the link in the show notes or the description to claim your free trial today and join us at the Everydayer Club. Now, welcome back to segment 2 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. All right, so we talked about William Håkansson, we're talking about Wiggo Sörensson, and Zachary Lansard. Now, let's talk about the next 3 picks that the Hurricanes made over the draft going into the 4th round at 105 overall is U.S. winger Michael Berchild, who played for the U.S. National Team Development Program last year. Of course, he still listed as a forward, left shot out of Minnesota. So he played for the U.S. National 18 team for the United States Development Program, had 23 goals, 53 points in 50 games, was a +6. Now, for the U.S. NTDP junior team of the United States Hockey League, about 8 goals, 19 points in 21 games, and was even a +9 there as well. And as the alternate captain for the World Junior 18 team last year, about 4 goals, 6 points in 5 games. So not bad, all things considered, for the fact you look at a guy who just progressively got better as it's gone on, because when you look at when you do it at Shattuck St. Mary's, 106 points in 22-23, 60 in 23-24, and then went to the national program and put up 29 points in 30 games for the U17 team back in 24-25. The U18 team, he had 26 points in 35 games, and then for the USHL junior team, he had 21 points in 34 games, and of course we followed up with 53 points and then 19 as well. He is committed to the University of Denver next year, so I'm really curious to see how he does with a really good program like that. Now, Mike Kelly of NHL Network said, we had him ranked 43rd overall, and the fact that he went 105th is crazy. Competitive player, smart, good skills, and a well-rounded player. Darren York even added, he's smart, competitive, and drives the net. He's like the little under the stick move as he's driving the net. He's able to read the spacing. He's not afraid, despite being the shorter side of things. He plays hard and plays smart. Like I said, 5'10", 180. If you give him to 5'11", possibly 6 foot, but even 5'11", 180, 190, I think this is somebody who be very shifty. And, you know, he could be someone that would be really fun to watch as well. And even Chris Peters from Flow Hockey said, Mikey Berchild is as Carolina a pick as you can get in this range. Hurricanes do find a way to get guys that can, even though they're a little bit undersized, can find ways to get stuff done. And Michael Berchild is definitely one of those guys. So he could definitely be someone to keep an eye on when you talk about someone who's going to the University of Denver and going to a program that could really, take his game to another level. Now, someone who I'm really excited for is the second American that's coming out of this draft. And like I said, you had Mikey Berchild come out of the U.S. National Development Team out of Minnesota. This next guy, I'm really excited what this guy can do. The fact of what he's done already with the Ottawa 67s and now going to Penn State. How about American netminder Ryder Fetterolf? Or as I just deemed during the draft, is don't hassle the Fetterolf. If you know, you know. But he is a goalie. He is listed 6 foot 185. Like I said, did play with the Ottawa 67s last year. Catches left-handed out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And the thing with him is he was the Canadian Hockey League goaltender of the year, the Ontario Hockey League goaltender of the year, also made the CHL All-Rookie team, first team OHL rookie team, and the OHL first team. And here's the crazy part too is he did all that in his first season. Yeah. Last year was his first year in the OHL and was the goalie of the year. That's crazy to think about. In 41 games as the starter for the 67s, how about a 29-9-3 record with a .923 save percentage, a 207 goals against average, and also had 6 shutouts for them as well. In the playoffs, 5-4 in 9 games with a 900 save percentage and a 304 goals against. But either way, when you really look at it, this guy is just on another level. And the fact that you got him in the fourth round at 125, 20 picks after you got Berchild, that is a very smart move. And like I said, for the fact that you're talking about a guy who was goalie of the year, not just for the Ontario Hockey League, but for the Canadian Hockey League as well, is absolutely crazy. And the fun part too is he was actually teammates with the 2025 7th rounder of Philip Ekberg that the Hurricanes got last year. And the fact this is what Jason Bukala said about Fetterolf. Boy, oh boy, does this kid compete to make saves. And he really does. And Darren York said Fetterolf came into the OHL as a rookie, wins Rookie of the Year, backstop Ottawa deep into the playoffs. I think he had that third best year in the last 10 years in terms of a rookie save percentage. He just stops the puck. It doesn't matter that he's a little on the shorter end. The ability to read the game and go to the side-to-side movements is great. He just had an unbelievable season. And yeah, he really did. Fetterolf is going to be absolutely, like I said, yeah, he's 6 foot. Yeah, he's 185. But if he goes to 6'1", 190, or stays at 6 foot and goes 190, 195, he's still going to be a very fast goalie. The fact that he can go side to side, play defense really well, and he's going to a really good program like Penn State. Yeah, I think he's going to be playing pretty well. The fact that he's basically he's going back to his home state, where Penn State is not far from Pittsburgh. And the fact that you got him in the 4th round and what he's already done is crazy. Like Chris Pierce of Flow Hockey had him at 75th. Elite Prospects had him ranked 140, and he was the 11th best goalie ranked for NHL Central scouting. And the fact that the Hurricanes got him at 105 is an absolute sneaky pick overall. Or at 125, I still think it's a very sneaky pick overall. I think he's going to be someone that's going to be really fun to watch. And the fact that He knows how to get his edges. He knows how to be mobilized. And like I said, when you look at a guy who had a 29-9-3 record in 6 shutouts and had just a tad above a 2 goal against average, it's crazy. Like even looking at his U.S. high school prep numbers at Gilmore Academy for the U.S. prep team, for that high school prep team, how about in 61 games, he had a 164 goals against, a 940 save percentage in 61 starts. He had a 49-0 record. And I know it's prep. It's not, it's not that crazy of a thing to think about, but a 49-0 record and a 164 goals against is pretty crazy when you're talking about prep high school hockey. And then goes and becomes a rookie of the year in the OHL. Pretty dang good stuff. Now, that was not the only goalie that the Hurricanes picked out of the draft. They actually went and got one more goalie, and this one was actually a Canadian, and he comes out of the Guelph Storm, and this is Zachary Jovanovski at 165 overall in round 6, 6'3", 185. York said about Jovanovski. Jovanovski is another player of our goalie coaches targeted for us in Guelph. He's got the opportunity to backstop Guelph in the Memorial Cup next year. He has a powerful side-to-side movement. He's really athletic and a little different in terms of the type of goalie because he's more 6'4", 6'4", 6'3", 185, stuff like that. He's somebody who our goalie coaches really loved, the powerful balance and movement that he has. Now, with what he did last year for Guelph, he did have a 25-24 record with a shutout, a 339 goals against average, and an 890 save percentage in 52 starts. In the playoffs, went 0-4 in his 4 games, a 420 goals against, and an 885 save percentage. Now, last year in 19 games for Guelph, he did go with a 931 goals against average and 886 save with a 6-10-3 record with a shutout and 19 starts. This is someone I'm very interested to see how he progresses, moving on, because right now, he, like I said, Darren York said he has the opportunity to play for Guelph next year. Right now, in terms of looking on elite prospects, he's not really assigned or going somewhere, but from what Darren York is saying, he's going to be with Guelph. So I'm curious to see how that really plays out when you're talking about Zachary Jovanovski. So that's someone to definitely keep an eye on overall. But the fact that you go back-to-back goalies, and I'm curious to see how both of these guys play, but I'm definitely excited for Ryder because he's someone who could be very good. And the fact that you're going to Penn State is going to be very huge. But Zach Jovanovski did round out the draft overall. The Hurricanes did have one more pick in round 6, but they did trade that for John Carlson, which we will talk about on the Tuesday episode of Locked On Hurricanes. So make sure to come back for the Tuesday show. We talk more about the Hurricanes trading that pick away along with Kyle Masters to get John Carlson, so stick around for that. But those are all the picks that the Hurricanes made. 6 draft picks, talking 2 Swedes, 2 Americans, and 2 Canadians. So what are my thoughts overall about the draft? We'll stick around. We'll talk about that here in a second on a Monday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Welcome back to segment 3 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. All right, so we talked about Håkansson, we talked about Sörensson, Lansard, Berchild, Fetterolf, and Jovanovski. So like I said, you got 2 Swedes, 2 Americans, and 2 Canadians. You got a defenseman, 3 forwards, and a couple of goalies. How did the Hurricanes do overall? I think they did pretty decently. Surprising we didn't get any Russians this year because the fact that the Hurricanes love drafting their Russians. It's been a bit since there was no Russians, but it's cool to the fact that the Hurricanes kind of, went a little bit with Sweden. Definitely focused on North America. I think depth-wise in terms of positions, hey, it's never a bad thing to get a couple extra goalies in your system. And with the fact that news coming out of Monday that Nikita Kwap, who didn't get a qualifying offer, is going back to Germany. So you're definitely going to need another body in your system. I know it's going to be, with colleges and, junior teams, but, within the pipeline, you do have guys that you can look and be like, maybe he joins the organization at some point in some capacity, whether it's in the ECHL with the Gargoyles or, eventually gets the AHL with the Wolves, who really knows? But there are some, when we look at goalies. And hey, you can never go wrong with big, rangy defensemen, especially when they come out of Sweden who compare themselves to Jacob Slavin. Now it'll be a couple years before his contract's up and top when you're talking about Håkansson, but he's definitely going to be someone to keep an eye on as well. Curious to see how Sörensson does as well, moving up into more of the higher leagues in the Swedish national hockey, in the Swedish hockey tiers. And then you're going to be looking at, what Berchild could do for you at the University of Denver. Can he keep his progression going? You're looking at Fetterolf. How is he going to do at Penn State? That's another guy to keep an eye on too. So you got two guys essentially going from the U.S. National Development Program into a really good hockey program that's Denver. And then you got a goalie who just won Rookie of the Year and was the goalie of the year, not just for the Ontario Hockey League, but for the Canadian Hockey League as well. And now he's going to a really good Big Ten program like Penn State. Now, as a Minnesota Golden Gophers guy, I wish we got him instead, but it'll be definitely, as a Hurricanes person, it's going to be fun to see how he could do as well. And then you talk about Jovanovski, what's he going to do with Guelph next year in the OHL? Hopefully you kind of see those numbers turn around. But overall, I mean, when you talk about you went into the draft with 4 picks, you come out with 6, you do trade 1 to get rights of a defenseman, which we'll talk about on Tuesday's show. But overall, you did what you were supposed to do. You got the draft capital. You made some picks. Were they flashy? I don't know if they're talking about flashy like everyone else is talking about. We were talking about, what Vancouver did, what San Jose did. Of course, Toronto got McKenna, which is no surprise. But there was a lot of teams who made a lot of picks in round 1 that everyone was a lot raving about. But for the Hurricanes, I think they did a pretty good job overall. I don't really grade drafts like that because you know how these guys are going to be in 2 years. I let the guys who want to draft give draft grades, give their draft grades. I'm just curious to see how these guys do. I look at numbers and, I read the scouting reports. I'm like, hey, if this guy sounds good and he could be a good fit down the road, that'd be fantastic. But I'm definitely excited to see how they play overall when you're talking about next season. Like I said, when you're talking about Håkansson, Sörensson, Fetterolf, those are the 3 guys I'm really keeping an eye on as well. But obviously you want to see how all 6 guys do next year as well as see them progress. But overall, I think the Hurricanes did fine for the fact that, like I said, I knew they were going to, trade out of the first round, got more draft capital, and then got 6 guys they think they could really help at some point. They weren't focusing on just one, positional group. Like I said, you got a defenseman, got a couple goalies, you pick up 3 forwards. Nothing wrong with that. Defense, the Hurricanes are really heavy on. Never a bad thing to get some extra forwards, especially some wingers, and then it's never a bad thing to get goalies, especially when you got a goalie who's done really well. So overall, like I said, I think they did fine. It'd be curious to see how it goes from there. But now that the draft is over, now we get to shift our focus to free agency, which isn't too far away. So, we'll definitely talk about that on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday's show going into free agency day, we'll talk a little bit more of that as well. So the grind does not stop. We just had the Stanley Cup final, just a little over 2 weeks ago. Had the draft. Now we're looking at free agency when this machine just keeps rolling. But let me know in the comments what you think, what you guys thought about the draft for the Carolina Hurricanes, and who are you excited for out of these 6 guys to see what they do next year as well. So it should be really fun to keep an eye out on how they do in this upcoming season for 26-27 for their respective teams. But until next time, guys, this will be the Monday edition of Locked on Hurricanes. Thank you for making your first listen of the day. If you've never missed an episode, the Everyday Air Club is built for you. Get Locked on Hurricanes ad-free, plus the members-only Discord access and more. Head to the link in the show notes or the description to join the club today. It's $5 a month, $50 for an entire year. And make sure to take advantage of our 7-day free trial. For those of you on video, we send you to the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, make sure your second listen to NHL Game Night on Locked On AHL. If you want to keep up with me, I'm one true Zach on X. The podcast is LO_Hurricanes. I'm also on Blue Sky, the Zachary Martin, where if you click links from my bio, you can find all my written content at thehockeywriters.com. I've been putting out so much stuff recently. We're talking about Stanley Cups. We're talking about parades, contract extensions, the draft, what the Hurricanes are going to do with John Carlson. So make sure to go check all of that out at thehockeywriters.com. And we got a lot more coming down the pipe very soon, especially with free agency being on Wednesday. If you want to listen to us on your favorite podcast platform, where you can find us on Google, Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, wherever you're listening to your podcast, make sure to leave a 5-star rating and review. On YouTube, it's Locked On Hurricanes. Subscribe, hit the bell notification so you don't miss the show. Hit the thumbs up to me if you like the show as well. Share with other Caniacs so we become everydayers just like you. But hope everyone enjoyed the Monday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Enjoy Monday. Until next time, as always, let's go Canes.